Hello, everyone. Welcome to our asthma workshop. My name is Sherilyn Powson. I'm outreach coordinator and staff member. Tonight we have a speaker. All right, erase that part. Dr. Lance Morris is a naturopathic doctor who's been practicing here in Tucson for 35 years plus, as he says. So thank you all for attending, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Morris.
Great, thank you so much. The BioTouch folks reached out to me and asked if I wanted to share one of these, and I immediately chose asthma. I was given a choice. There were two options, and I chose asthma in particular because asthma is my story. And in fact, it's because of asthma, bronchitis, respiratory tract infections, chronically as a child, that I found nature cure for myself, and then realized over many years, often things that we do naturally, spontaneously, and have an affinity for, we don't realize is our calling. But eventually my wife helped me realize that I needed to be sharing this information on a more technical, professional level, and not just for myself, family, and friends. So let's just take a step back. I'll share my personal story along the way. So asthma is a medical condition that has several characteristic symptoms. So the primary symptom complex is dyspnea, which is shortness of breath, and then the formation of a thick mucoid with cough. Often that mucoid discharge is difficult to cough up. And so asthma patients, if you know anyone, if you're one, you know that it can really be startling, disturbing, frightening, because you find yourself suffocating. And so one of the things that's happening is that it creates a longer expulsion of breath because of the narrow airways, and then you're kind of gasping to get air in. So longer, shorter breath out, gasping in, and so it totally throws off oxygen, CO2, pH levels in the body, and then it can cause a lot of complications and even dangerous situations. So here's the interesting thing. If you ask traditional doctors, medical doctors, what is asthma? How do we get it? And then what do we really do for it? The tendency is to share some technical biochemical information that relates to what we would call the pathophysiology of the disease process, which tells us nothing about how we got it, and certainly doesn't help us to fix or cure it. In that universe, in what we call the allopathic or modern medical universe, asthma is treated fairly straightforwardly. It's either they use drugs that are bronchodilators that force the airway to open up, drugs like albuterol, which are used as inhalers, or they love steroids. And steroids are also used as inhalers, or they may be used orally. And I can tell you, steroids are virtual miracle drugs. I mean, these things can really change symptoms. There's a big catch, though, is they're in a category of medications that are suppressive. So they actually block the body's natural healing mechanism. And so asthmatics often, by the time they come to me with asthma, they've been on these drugs for years and years and years. And I can tell you that because of that, they're some of the most difficult cases I deal with. I specialize in chronic degenerative disease, and asthma, when most people get it, it fits into that category. So a couple of statistical pieces of information. So currently about 3% of the population has active asthma. And the evidence is that number, though, has been increasing over the last decade. So, it may be actually closer to 4 to 5%. Historically, asthma is more prevalent in children. So from age 10 and lower is kind of the dominant age group. And interestingly, it's 2-to-1 male over female. And that's out through all of the literature and the history of this condition. So, and asthma is one of those conditions that you may have heard this premise. This is certainly what happened in my personal story, and that is when I figured out what it was really going on and cured it for myself long before I knew about naturopathic medicine or nature cure or any of this stuff. I was informed by both my parents and all the physicians I went to that I had all of a sudden outgrown my asthma, because that's what children do. They outgrow their asthma. And I'm just one of the lucky ones that happened with. I shared with my parents and doctors that no, actually, I guarantee you that's not what happened, because I've discovered, in my case, what the cause is, and I can make it go away, and I can turn it on like a switch, on and off. I can do it any day, any week, all the time. And they just blew me off. It was like, you're just a child and you don't know what you're talking about. But it was really the impetus, as I said, that really started, my journey into natural healing. So let's talk about some of the things that we know about asthma from a physiologic perspective. So asthma is generally broken up into two categorizations, what we call extrinsic or intrinsic. And extrinsic asthma always is immunologically derived. So with extrinsic, there is an increase in an immunoglobulin in the body called IgE, pretty universally. Immunoglobulins are components of white blood cells of the immune system that act like a lock, key, and trigger mechanism. And so we're exposed to something called an antigen. And an antigen, if it's environmental, it can be pollen or mold or animal dander or dust or any number of chemicals. If it's dietary, what's happening, interestingly, is most dietarily induced asthma happens through a different pathway than environmentals. Those of you who have environmental reactivity usually react like this. I mean, it's within a matter of seconds that you can go outside, the Palo Verde's blooming, and before you even look up at the beautiful little yellow flowers, you're like gasping for air. And then you look up and see them and go, oh, the Palo Verde or the sagebrush, whatever it might be. And you may be accurate in identifying a trigger. You may not. It may be something else out there that you're reacting to rather than what you think you're reacting to. So what we call IgE-mediated hypersensitivity reactions are immediate, occurring within seconds to no more than a minute. So when a traditional allergist does skin scratch testing, they're doing what's called IgE testing. So these little blips that they make on the arm or on the back, they create a large, swollen, inflamed area, indicate that there's a reaction being induced. And interestingly, traditional medical doctor allergists will tell you that environmental allergies causing asthma or other health conditions are fairly common, but that food sensitivity is almost unheard of, very rare. And probably the most famous foods correlated to immediate reactions, whether asthmatic or some other symptom complex, is shellfish and peanuts, right? And people that have those sensitivities often carry an epinephrine pen in their purse or their bag or pocket, because that reaction can be life-threatening. So food allergies, on the other hand, which are a major vector for most asthmatics, not exclusively by any means, but a major factor. I mean, in my experience clinically, if we control food allergy, then in most cases we will over time control asthma. So it's that strong a correlation. But food allergies are what we call delayed hypersensitivity reactions. So rather than occurring within seconds to a minute, they occur over a period of hours to days. And because of that, we lose the ability to connect the dots and figure out what food might be bothering us. Okay? And so people struggle with this. So we do have blood tests that can analyze this, primarily using immunoglobulins called IgG and IgA, which look at the delayed reactions. That said, it's very important for you all to understand that blood tests are not the gospel. They are not the answer, and they do not tell us yes or no definitively. All blood tests are reference markers that give us an indication of something that has to be looked at in the bigger picture, in the broader context of things, right? But so relative to IgE and relative to foods, probably the dominant, reactors are, as I said, shellfish, peanuts, other nuts, and fish in general. I mean, those are the most common, but the truth is that you could have an Ig reaction to anything. With the delayed reactions, the most common reactions come to us from dairy, specifically things derived from cow, and then wheat, but not only wheat, but actually all gluten, and then chocolate and citrus and tomatoes are in kind of the top tier of reactivity. And I will tell you that in my clinical experience, that dairy and wheat, i.e. gluten, are probably the two dominant nemesis foods on our planet, causing tremendous health harm and danger and complications. And we as a culture are virtually addicted to them. I mean, most people consume dairy and wheat or grain products every day, multiple times a day. And if you suggested to someone, just do a trial and stop that, they go, are you kidding? What would I eat? What would I eat? It's like, there's so many other foods. There's lots of things you can eat. So that segues to my story. I was, during high school, I went to a private boarding school in Sedona called Verde Valley School, or VVS. It's a boarding school, so it's live-in, right? And this is in the 60s. And so there were a group of students on campus that were vegan. And I didn't know what that was. And I had no interest in changing my diet because I was a milk, steak, and potato kind of guy. And I just thought that's what you eat because that's what's yummy. But what I observed is that these students that were vegan seemed to be kind of the movers and shakers on campus. I mean, they were interesting. They were talking and dialoguing and interacting about very important issues. And I wanted to hang out with them. And so I said, I want to hang out with you guys. And they said, well, table, 3 times a day, we all sit together in this room eating, and that's where the good conversations go on. So I said, well, that's great. I'll join you. And they said, no problem. There's only one little stipulation. You cannot bring any of your animal foods to our table. And I was like, And I said, well, sure, why not? I'll try it. And I did. And about 3 months into this, I woke up one day and I was scratching my head trying to figure out what was different, what had changed. And all of a sudden it dawned on me. I wasn't coughing, I wasn't gagging, I wasn't choking, I wasn't sneezing, I wasn't using my inhaler, I wasn't doing anything, and I felt really good. And I had this incredible revelation. Could my diet have anything to do with my asthma? I mean, I don't think so, because I've gone to the best doctors in the world. I mean, my parents took me to Mayo Clinic and Sloan Kettering, and, they're, PhD level, really educated folks, and they know what the right thing to do is. And none of those doctors had ever once suggested that an allergy could have anything to do with my asthma. So what I discovered is, guess what? Dairy was my nemesis food. Absolutely, dairy was doing it. Wheat was second, But when I combined the two, it was explosion land. And so I did trials, eat it, get sick. Don't eat it, clear up. Eat it, get sick. I mean, I went back and forth. I tried to stop it for 3 months and then eat it, got sick. Stop it for 6 months, eat it, get sick. 9 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. Not for me. Now, other individuals may not have that degree of sensitivity, but I can tell you the first thing I tell patients in lieu of doing an expensive blood test is just do a trial of taking dairy and gluten out of your diet. And I don't care what your health problem is, you will improve. I don't care what your health problem is, it will improve if you take those things out. We know that part of what's happening in asthma is that whether it's, so there's the extrinsic, which I've described, and then there's intrinsic. And intrinsic isn't really an antigen-antibody reaction. It's induced because of an external vector. So it's induced because of cold, or it's induced because of exercise, or it's induced because of stress. Just emotional stress can be a vector that does this. But whether it's an extrinsic antigen antibody cause or an intrinsic reaction, it causes the release of mast cells which are part of the immune system, to degranulate. And when they degranulate, they release a whole series of inflammatory chemical mediators. Probably the most common one is histamine, right? Histamine. And so therefore we use drugs that are antihistamines that can sometimes be part of the therapy. So from a natural standpoint, there's a variety of nutrients, that we know that are very important to stabilize mast cells. Besides histamine, they actually release a whole series of other chemicals, probably the most potent of which are called leukotrienes. And what you need to know is that a leukotriene coming from the same cell type as histamine is 1,000 times more potent than histamine as a mediator of inflammation and bronchoconstriction. From a natural standpoint, a couple of things that we use to help to stabilize the mast cell from degranulating. So we stop it before it starts. And this is really critical. Antihistamines like Benadryl don't stop it before it starts. They only reduce it after it's happened. And that's true of the bronchodilators. It's true even of the steroids. So if we can stop it on the front end, then we have a very powerful tool. So one of the most powerful tools is vitamin C. And it's really interesting that that vitamin C, that humans are the only mammal that does not manufacture our own vitamin C. It's like somehow we got thrown a curve. And if you're familiar at all with Linus Pauling, who is, the father of vitamin C therapy, he speculated that deficiency of vitamin C is probably one of the major vectors of disease induction on the earth. And that I can tell you, I believe everybody needs more vitamin C than they can get from their diet alone. In fact, in severe cases, we use vitamin C intravenously, where we can really, overload the cells and stabilize it. But in nature, vitamin C comes with what are called flavonolignans. And one of the most well-known flavonoids is called quercetin. And quercetin is the most effective mast cell stabilizer. So it stops the release of the histamine and the leukotriene. So if you're taking vitamin C and quercetin on a regular basis, many times that can cure asthma for some folks. You want to identify food allergens. You want to identify allergens. You want to stop the inflammatory mediators. And then we know that one of the things common in asthma is that there's a metabolic defect in what's called prostaglandin synthesis. So prostaglandins are intracellular hormones. So when we think about hormones, we normally think about, like thyroxine for the thyroid gland or estrogen from the ovary. But prostaglandins are produced in every cell of the body. And there's three categories, 1, 2, and 3. The 2 series is induced with using through a fatty acid called arachidonic acid. And we find arachidonic acid in all animal protein, and particularly high in peanuts, interestingly enough. So research has shown that patients who go on a completely vegan diet, which was my experiment, that the cure rate of asthma reaches the 97 percentile from going vegan. And we think that it has to do primarily with this prostaglandin pathway that induces inflammation by taking out the animal proteins. And probably taking away some of the allergens inherent in a vegan diet. One of the catches, though, is that we like things to happen really fast. And the research shows that it takes upwards of a year of a vegan diet to hit that 97 percentile. We also know that there's a metabolic defect leading through the pathway of tryptophan to serotonin. So tryptophan is an amino acid. Serotonin is one of the neurotransmitters. And we know that serotonin is a very potent vasoconstrictor. So another critical treatment modality is vitamin B6, because vitamin B6 compensates for that defect. So there's a lot of herbs that we use, for asthma. They can be done as teas, herbs like, elderberry and, echinacea and grindelia. One of the best herbs is an herb called ephedra. And you may be aware that ephedra, which is called Mormon tea and grows all over the desert wild, is illegal. You can't get it from a health food store. You can't buy it online because the FDA banned it. It's potentially dangerous. It's a stimulant, so it speeds the body up too much. And kids found out how to do this and end up making amphetamines out of it in their bathtubs. But you can get it out in the desert and make it as a tea, Mormon tea. You just have to use a bit of it. So, I've talked the whole time, and I want to give you guys a space for some questions because I could keep rambling on with a lot of stuff. So ask me. Yes, ma'am.
You said it was vitamin C and
quercetin.
quercetin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that particular bioflavonoid above and beyond all others. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you talked about milk, does that
Yeah.
include milk that's like raw milk, or is it just all this pasteurized stuff?
So there's no question that pasteurized, homogenized, adulterated, hormone-laden, antibiotic-laden products are clearly more damaging. But the evidence is that I don't care if you get it, raw, organic, it's going to nail you anyway. Yeah, sadly.
So you mentioned a vegan diet a couple of different times, but a lot of vegans still eat wheat. So you're talking about a gluten-free vegan diet specifically when you mentioned that 97%?
So the research is not with people going gluten-free.
It's just vegan.
It's just vegan. And I can tell you that my own personal experience is dairy is 100 times worse for me than wheat or gluten. But when I combine them, there's a magnifying negative effect. But if I do just gluten alone, I'm not as set off, and that seems to be historically true. But one of the reasons that a lot of the sugar-free, grain-free, things like the keto diet are so effective is because they take out the primary allergens, which is mostly the grains. We're all allergic to grains. So if you take all the grains out, everybody feels better. And so they think it's, and I mean, that's part of why it's working. Should we consume a grain-free diet? I mean, I think it's appropriate short-term to do things like a ketogenic diet for a certain specific therapeutic reason, but to stay there and to take away all grains indefinitely, no, that's not in balance. But I think, to be honest with you, we should be fermenting our grains. I don't think we should be just cooking them and eating them. We need to either turn them into sprouts or we need to ferment them so that we start creating natural enzymes to help pre-digest those foods.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was perfect. All right.
Oh, that was really good. I learned a lot.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's a short window. It's like it's hard to.
I know.
I just,
it's hard.
you know,
to do
I-
that. Yeah.
you know,
We're gonna teach. If you want to hang out, you
Yeah,
can.
would you
or-
like? Please join. I just wanted to tell everyone too. Dr. Morris brought some literature
Oh, yeah.
here.
My brochures,
Uh-huh.
cards, and
Yes, tell us
I've
about
written a book, Edge and Beyond, which is what I tell people is read the back cover, which is Dr. Gary Schwartz's professor researcher here at the university, and he wrote the foreword. He wrote the foreword. But what I tell people is read the back and then just skim the contents. And if that's not enough to be interested in it, then it's clearly not for you. But if you do that, it might entertain.
And I would like to say that Paul will read your book if you read his, because Dr. Gary Schwartz did the preface for our book
Yours
too.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very good.
Gary
We
gets out
we
there.
can
Yeah.
trade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Thanks.
my. Yeah.
Thanks, Lance. That was wonderful.
That one really
good
gave-
information
I
for me.
know.
Sorry,
I learned
didn't
a
give you
lot.
More herbs and homeopaths and other
No, it
things,
was-
but
Well, that's all right.
That's okay. You gotta come see me if you really want to be treated.
Yeah.
Unless the biotouch just heals it, and then you don't need.
Well, that's what we're going to teach you now. You came here to learn BioTouch, and you know, it's interesting. Just some of my stories with allergies. It's great to know about the allergy part because that's one of our main sets you're going to learn tonight.
Mhm.
And we do have a few people here who haven't been to BioTouch. You've never had BioTouch, right? Have you had? No. So we have a few people. Your cousin? Niece.
Yeah.
So we're going to start from the beginning to let you even know what BioTouch is. And the first thing to know about it is it's very simple. And it takes 2 fingers and it lightly touches on the skin like a butterfly. And so let's try that. Just turn to one another. And it's touching another person. So,
Lightly on the skin.
Cheryl, why don't you come sit up here with
Yeah,
Dr.
Sherilyn, you want to
Morris
come up here
and
next to Dr. Morris?
let him experience it too.
Yeah.
Did you get touched? Did you touch? Touch her. Touch, touch,
Two
touch.
massage therapists touching you.
So what you have, and we're going to go over it quite in detail. Oh, somebody stole our manual.
Oh, what?
Sorry, we got another.
No, we're good.
We
He's
have
just
lots
kidding.
of manuals.
We have lots of manuals.
So what we have here is, this is the entire technique. That's it on a chart. Usually we do a class, we go through the whole training of it. But what we've done is we've taken pieces out of this just to address allergies, which we can teach in the next hour and a half. And we're actually going to practice the points. And so we made these little workbooks that you have, which are pieces of this book, and we're going to go over how that works. What? Oh, give him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's give him a workbook.
And so it's light touch on the skin, and it's really about what Dr. Morris was saying. This is a way to empower you and your family to take responsibility for your own health, and then work with, whether it's your doctor, your naturopath. You know, we're not here to say do BioTouch instead of, but what we have found, for example, I was at a big formal gathering, and the woman ate the shellfish, and she immediately started to sneeze and choke up, and her husband ran out to the car to get her whatever that is that you take in emergency care. And so I automatically said, let me do this thing. And somehow, I don't know how, but because we touch on the skin, got in her dress and did that first point that you'll learn today and started doing the allergy point, which you're going to get today. And by the time he could come back, she was fine. And that's the power that happens with BioTouch. And it doesn't take a belief system to do that. I guess we're going to let Bev tell you all that stuff.
You're doing fine.
No,
You're good.
So anyway, just wanted to share my story with it. And then with the asthma, and I think what you talked about too, which is important, is it's something to do before you have the attack too. This is a preventative healthcare. So if you're going to do the vitamin C and the quercetin and the B6 and the, change your diet, BioTouch can help you with that. It can help you with your addictions to gluten or your addictions to these foods. If you finally decide, I'm going to try and make a change because the body's so used to that. So BioTouch can help with that transition that you decide to do emotionally.
It's true. Well, I would like everybody to turn to page 6.
Yes.
Please. We're just to go over a few things.
Which is actually just the first page.
The first page. Oh, yes, sorry, it is. It's the first page in our little workbook. So on this page it says, what is BioTouch? And Paul's talked a little bit about it, but I will have to say that, we have discovered that BioTouch is quite unique in the fact that every single person can do it. It doesn't take a 10 years of study and lots of money and being touched on the forehead by a master or whatever, initiated. It doesn't take any of that kind of stuff. What it takes is just your willingness and a compassionate heart to want to help somebody else. So this is actually a gift for humanity because every single person has the juice. We can just, with these 2 fingers, step up and touch specific points on the body to address every single dis-ease, condition, whatever, for a body. And the other thing for me that I'm always reminded of is that our bodies are amazing, intelligent units. Its whole expression is to be in wholeness, to be in balance. And when we get out of balance, what is gorgeous about BioTouch is that in that light, loving touch, totally invasive, totally holistic, the body gets its own opportunity to bring itself back into. All we have to do is be present with it and willing to listen. And in that self-awareness, which is really what this encourages for all of us, we begin to make those different changes. And some of the things that Dr. Morris was bringing up, it might bring us more into a place where we are willing to do some research on our own, do some experimenting on our own, taking responsibility for our own health. That's what BioTouch is really about. And in this, world, we honor everything here. We honor all modalities because we know that BioTouch can only enhance whatever you're doing. If you're going to an allopathic doctor, naturopathic doctor, if you're doing a special diet, if you're, going through getting ready for surgery, BioTouch can only help. That's it. So it doesn't interfere in anything else. And, it says right here, number 1, it's so easy to learn, even children can learn it. Well, we know that for a fact because we've actually had children become certified in BioTouch. It's like they get it. It's so innate in us, that loving touch, it's just, that is what connects us. And we're not connected. That touch is we all need to be cared for. And that's what BioTouch does for all of us. So whether you're giving BioTouch or receiving BioTouch, it's a relationship because you're both going to get something out of BioTouch. That's just to be in the presence of another human being in that intimate place where there's no, criticism or expectation or there's nothing. There's just honoring that other person. That's the beginning of love. So that's really what we're holding here. We're holding the fact that this is for us to come back in to a position to each other that we can love and take care of each other. As I said, it's a complement to any healthcare program. It's totally non-invasive. You cannot hurt anybody with BioTouch. There's no levels of ability. Tonight, you're all going to get a chance to learn these sets of points that address asthma, and I will guarantee you it's going to be totally effective. And on the receiving end, something is going to change in the body. It's really that beautiful. So just, whatever's going to happen. I will say this, though, because we have this all the time. Because as you said, Dr. Morris, we want the fix now. We're quick fix mentality, right? Take a pill, give me a shot, do whatever. What I'm learning with BioTouch is that we have an opportunity to start to trust that intelligence to, it brings us into this self-loving state where we can open ourselves up and begin to nourish this body. This is it. And what do we all share? We all share a body. We all have a body. It's the one thing that we all have in common. They may look a little different, but they work the same way. So we can recognize each other in those bodies. So we don't have a philosophy. We don't have a belief system. You don't have to have any of that to practice BioTouch. You don't have to prepare yourself. And for heaven's sakes, you certainly don't have to clear yourself for the negative, whatever you think you're going to get from somebody else. Because how can that happen in love? BioTouch is just loving one another. None of that can happen when you're practicing BioTouch. So we're very unique in many ways. And the fact that this is so accessible, so affordable, so immediately effective, we're not programmed for that. Not at all. Because we have given up, as you said, we've given up our power. We do not remember that this is the power right here. We just have to give it that loving touch and that chance. So that's what we're here to teach tonight, so that you can help someone in your life. You can immediately start to work with anybody, whether it's family, friend, a coworker, some person on the street. I mean, that's really what this is all about. It's about us, all those barriers falling away from us.
We have a friend in the Chicago area. She does BioTouch in the bars. She, instead of dancing, she does BioTouch for her tips.
Right.
And she works with the gals who dance. And it's really, to her, an empowerment for the women to help them with their body identification. And also these guys that are there, and she'll go around and do the touching, and work on their back or whatever. And it's just as effective there. So, this technique came from a Western-minded person. This is not something that was channeled from the ethers. People aren't sure how he got it, but it was a mining engineer in Colorado who got it. And he got it in a emergency where a lady was hemorrhaging and having a miscarriage, and he just said, "I can help," and he did some points, and she stopped hemorrhaging. And that was the beginning of him receiving these points. And the story goes on and on and on how I met him. We don't take a lot of time to explain it here. It is in the book that Deborah Schildhouse wrote that we'll make available later. But the nice thing is I met him in a little town in Colorado, and he helped me with my back pain almost immediately after a couple sessions. And I just watched people come from a very conservative area, Southern Baptists, Mormons, cowboys, ranchers. The Indians would come from the reservations, and they were all sitting in this house together getting BioTouch, and they weren't being charged anything. Norman and Carol didn't charge a penny. There was no whale music and tingling cymbals, as we like to say. They were just doing the touch in their bedroom, and there was always cookies and cigarettes and coffee, and they were all red meat, white kind of people, and yet everybody was being healed in this little house. And I just said, we need to get this out to the public, because healing can be difficult, and here it was finally meeting something that met people in their suffering And then, as Bev was saying, your own self-awareness will help you find the things that you need to get better. So our goal is to reach the masses of people. That's our goal. We want to reach the masses to get it into the home, so when you leave here, you're going to go home and practice with somebody. And so that was the beginning of BioTouch as a public awareness. That was 30 years ago. And these classes here are designed to just give you little pieces, of which every month we do a different condition. So,
Yeah.
Any questions so far about that? We don't go into a lot of the history here because all that matters is you touch.
That's right. That's what we really want to teach you tonight. Any questions on that page? This is just us giving you a basic, especially for those who don't know anything about BioTouch. As Paul was saying, we use the first 2 fingers, lightly touching on the skin, certain points, and holding each point to a count of from 6 to 8 seconds. That's it. And you just touch very lightly and you address whatever it is, because that's it right there. Those 17 sets of points, that's a whole technique. And in these workshops, you're just going to learn what you need to know for asthma. And pretty simple.
And so you've got these terms, you have the terms on here. Now these aren't going to be necessary to know, but we showed them to you. It's how we describe how we touch the points. Okay, but not necessary you'll not have to memorize them. Now we are going to show a series of points. You're going to go in the room and practice. BioTouch is done on the skin to one another. And that is the most consistently effective way that BioTouch can be practiced. And it's consistently most effective one person touching another. It's not about the first question we always get is, can I work on myself? Okay, well, you can take the points and do them any way you want. But BioTouch as a system that we have to keep really clean and clear as we get this around the world is one person touching another on the skin, lightly like a butterfly, each point for 6 to 8 seconds. Okay, so those are the only rules that you really have with it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring the mannequin out and we're going to go through the points and then we'll break up into groups and practice them. We have enough practitioners here. Okay, let's just do that.
Yep.
So I'm going to back this up. She's going to move that chair. We're going to move her here. I've got this all designed perfectly right there. Okay.
Okay. So everybody is on the page with the greeting. The greeting is literally the key. It's kind of like unlocks the body. It sets up between the 2 people practicing, what we call the associate, the one giving BioTouch, and the recipient, the one receiving BioTouch. It sets up a harmony. So it's just like saying, hello, I love you to the body. So remember, we're going to be taking, using the first 2 fingers. Now, this is going to be the only set you're going to use one hand, and you're going to use the dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, there's only 2 points in this set. So you're going to be using your dominant hand to touch both of those points. That's the only thing that we say about the set. It has to be a dominant hand. And so what we're going to do is we're going to find point 1 of the greeting set, and you're going to locate it there's a soft tissue just below the breastbone. Feel that? And you're going to take your first 2 fingers. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to lightly put my 2 fingers there in that soft tissue, and I'm going to hold that 6 to 8 seconds. And then point 2 is on the back. And I'm going to locate point 2. There's this, we call it the big bone. If you lean forward, this bone pops out at the base of the neck. It's a C7, but we call it the big bone. For point 2, you want to be 1 to 1.5 inches to the left of that big bone at the base of the neck. And again, with your dominant hand, you're going to hold point 2, 6 to 8 seconds, very lightly. And that's the greeting. Now you can begin to address anything on the body that you want to do. But always do the greeting. Doesn't even matter if you're, I mean, we know if you just do the greeting, that's gonna do something to the body. So we have a lot of massage therapists that are using BioTouch now, and sometimes they can just do the greeting, but their clients go, oh, what was that? It just opens the body, makes it more relaxed. It's kind of like getting the body ready to receive these other points. So what's the second set we're doing, Paul?
Infection, allergy.
So allergy. So we're going to do the allergy set. It's really a set. There's 3 of them, but we're going to use the allergy point for asthma. So if you'll look, there's a little inset in you see the points 1 and 2. We're going to be using the allergy point, which is point 2 actually, or just the allergy point. I won't confuse you. But anyway, so we're going to find our whole point. And again, it's going to be at that greeting point 1, which is in that fleshy area just below the breastbone. And we're going to rest it on what we call a whole point. This is when the 2 fingers are making constant contact with the skin, while with the other hand, you're going to be touching other points. So that's how we're going to do the allergy set. So putting your 2 fingers in that soft tissue and holding them on the skin, lightly on the skin. That allergy point is at the top of the neck, right? There's that large muscle on the right side of the neck. You want to be right on that large muscle, right on the side of that large muscle. Can you see that? This large muscle here? So your 2 fingers are holding 6 to 8 seconds while your other hand is holding on that point at the greeting. So you can hold 6 to 8 seconds, lift, and you can touch that. If somebody's really having an allergic reaction, you hold that 6 to 8 seconds, lift, hold it as many times as you want to. You can repeat those points as many times as you want to. And that's it.
Do you still have to use your dominant hand?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, it's only
Only
with the greeting. Yeah, good question. So, I could be standing on the side, but I probably wouldn't because
No, I was just
So
wondering.
we only have one rule. It's called a misfire. That's when the arms cross or the hands touch. If that happens, just break your hands apart and go back, because sometimes you just have to change your position.
Okay.
But yeah, that's really either hand. So it's only the dominant hand with the greeting set. So are there any questions about the allergy point? This is really, really good, really effective. So you want to use this for sure. Were you going to do the lungs? Okay.
Okay, so the lung set itself is designed for that whole area that gets all locked up, and we'll show you how to specifically work into that bronchial area too. Good? Okay. So the lung set, again, we're area specific. We don't have a set of points that works like if you go to the acupuncturist and you're working on the gallbladder, but she's putting things on your toe. Okay? We go right to the area where it bothers people. So the lung set for asthma is real important, especially if you're in an asthmatic attack and those bronchioles are starting to lock up. Okay, so this is a set that can be done sitting up or laying down. You'll see in the room, which is easiest to do, but we're going to do her standing up. And we're working, of course, the rib area where the lungs reside. Okay, so we have a hold point. Your hold point is going to be just at the top of that breastbone, sort of in and out of that notch. Again, lightly there, you don't want. Okay? Now with your other hand, you're going to touch point 1, which is not quite the bottom rib, and just before it begins to turn to the side. Now order doesn't matter either, whether I'm one on this side or one on the other side. So not quite the bottom rib, just before it begins to turn to the side. Point 2 is just under the breast. And if you can't quite get under there, you can go to the side. So anywhere to get that second point. And the third point is a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches in from that top of the armpit into the bronchial area there. Again, 6 to 8 seconds. And then the same on the other side. So they're just the same points, not quite the bottom rib, halfway up, and then a cup 2 to 3 inches in from the top of the armpit. Okay, now as in most of the sets we do, it's the same sets of points, we just do them in different ways. That's how simple it is. So now we're just going to take those same points, but we're going to do what we call a matching fire. We're going to touch the same point on either side, but this is one of the only times we actually use our whole hand. There's only 2 places where we put the whole hand down, and so we're going to do what we call a butterfly. And we're going to cover those points in a matching fire. So we're going to do points 1 and 5 like this. So I would be like this mostly. And then 2 and 6 up under the breast. And then 3 and 6 at the top. And you're going to see it is sort of a weird contortion when you get in there, but we'll show you how it'll be easy for you to do. And then we just match fire the points. Matching fire again, the same point on either side of the body. So now we're just doing those points again, 1 and 4, 2 and 5, and then 3. Now we've given you the sets of points in the orders that we think are most important. So if all you could do if somebody's having an attack is just that allergy point because they're allergic to something, then if you can get to the lungs because you're even doing pre-care, or well, you come in sometimes and you've been using your inhaler. Does it help at all when you get worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still using a long-term inhaler, but
Right.
I don't have as many flare-ups when I get the lung set done. For sure, it's very noticeable.
Okay. And so that lung, now what happens is once you've done the basic sets of points, you can always do what we call extra work and local work. So from what I understand, I'm blessed not to have asthma, but people get all tightened up in here. I guess, that whole area the bronchioles get. So it's easy to just do what we call local work and enhancements. You can't hurt any biotouch, so you might just lightly touch that area. Now we do a thing called sweeping where we slowly and deliberately move across an area. So you might just work those bronchioles. Now for massage therapists, if you did the same thing with massage, but you just did real lightly. Now with a massage therapist, they might actually start to get in there a little deeper. Maybe they're going to really get deeper and try to massage that. But just starting the biotouch very lightly in that area just gives it a lot of release. A lot of, just that stress just. Any questions about that? Now there's a little thing on the side there called the oxygen point. So a lot of times people can't get that oxygen, and they're gasping to get oxygen out of the atmosphere. That is one simple little point, and it's right in this little area. Here's the collarbone, the top of the shoulder, and the side of the neck. Right in that little triangle, that's the point. While you hold on that X, that's the same point as greeting point 1. So people who can't get that oxygen content up, you can just repeatedly do that. And when we say repeatedly, you do 6 to 8 seconds, and then you can release it 6 to 8 seconds again. And when I worked with my mother, and they had that pulse ox thing in there, I could actually see the pulse ox go way up.
There's no amount of repetition?
No. You just do what feels right or what you have time, especially if somebody's in an asthmatic attack. You might just really take some time. You might do this set a couple of times. You might work just a lot in the bronchioles. You might take one hand in the back, 2 fingers in the back, and maybe do what we call through fire in that whole lung area, front and back, or so you can do anything you want. The key is just remember, you can't hurt somebody, and it would just be, where would you want to give them some care? Okay, so I think we only have one more set. Yeah, Bev's going to show you the stress set.
Do the stress set. Let's see. I guess I can do it from this side, although. So it's always on the stress set. Those sets of points are always on the left side of the body. So we're going to find the whole point, which, guys, it's greeting point 1. Isn't that interesting? We find that this is a whole point for a lot of sets. So the stress set's very easy. It's 2 points. We're going to imagine a imaginary line, a diagonal line that runs from this notch at the top of the breastbone down to a point on the left breast, kind of in line where we say the nipples on a youth would be. Okay, and we're going to divide that line into thirds. So I can't do this. I'm sorry. I got to get over here. Okay, so we're going to divide that line into thirds. And so point 1 is at the top of the first third. Where am I? Top of the first third. Again, you're holding lightly at that X, which is at greeting point 1. So point 1 is at the top, and then you're going to just, point 2 is at the second third, right on that diagonal line. And again, you can go back and forth and you can touch points 1 and 2. Very easy and very effective. We always either they will take a big breath or you will. I have. So that's it. Very easy. Yeah, yes.
I have a scar from my open heart surgery,